Hello, I'm Brian Critchell from the AHC Communities. I'm talking with Joanne Segars, Chief Executive of the NAPF. Joanne, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
It looks as if the dust has settled after the election. We have a coalition government promising consensus politics. But looking beyond the next election, looking beyond just getting the coalition through the next 5 years, what do you think the NAPF should be doing to help avoid our children and our children's children potentially sleepwalking into a financial future of great uncertainty, if not absolute disaster?
Well, it is an issue we see as being hugely important. 10 million people not saving or not saving enough for retirement. So it's an issue which we have to address at the NAPF, and we have to persuade government that they need to address. Of course, that extends well beyond their time horizons, but we can't just allow government to dodge the issue. So I think there are a number of things we need to do. First of all, we need to make sure that the government addresses properly the issues facing existing workplace pensions, and that means also focusing on the issues facing today's defined benefit schemes in the private sector, which is an issue which governments traditionally have chosen to ignore. Secondly, the NAPF has been very supportive of the previous government's pension settlement around auto-enrolment, mandatory contributions and the creation of Nest. That's now under review, and I think we will continue to support that overall settlement, because it's very clear to us that auto-enrolment works, it gets people into pension schemes, and that's one way of addressing this to ensure that everybody has a good scheme. And of course the other is state pension provision. We've got one of the lowest state pensions in the OECD. That's a scandal for a nation which is as rich as ours. We have to do something there. We've proposed a higher state pension, what we call a foundation pension, paid at £8,000 a year to everybody. That would take 2 million pensioners off of means-tested benefits. Hugely important. If you've got a decent state pension and private pension top-ups on top of that, we think that will go an awful long way to resolving the pensions crisis, which, unless we do resolve it, we're facing as a nation.
Yeah. So where do you see the NAPF best devoting its energies in order to hopefully bring that about?
Well, we've got a huge job of work to do to talk to the new government. We've already had a good number of meetings with ministers and officials, both in the Department for Work and Pensions and the Treasury. That's part of what we do as our bread and butter, if you like, at the NAPF. And it's a question of continually engaging with them, continuing to talk to them about why they need to address these issues and the risks to the government if they don't, and to develop our policies, and also, of course, to respond to the many initiatives and consultation exercises that they've announced. So I think it's working with them on a number of fronts all the time, of course, talking to and taking account of the views of our members, which we do all the time.
Well, you have a significant membership based across different sectors of the community. Do you think that your processes are nimble enough for you to keep up with the pace of change and the pace of consultation?
Well, I'd like to think so. Clearly we have our two policy-making committees, the Retirement Policy Council and the Investment Council. They meet on a sort of regular basis, but we are in dialogue with members all the time through different channels, whether it's email, whether we sort of send out requests for information or some data that we want run, or numbers we want run on particular schemes. We're doing that at the moment, for example, on the government's change in the budget on how tax will be applied to higher rate earners, higher rate taxpayers rather. And we invite views through our regular Policy Watch document that goes out to all our members every fortnight, and it has in it a list of the consultation exercises that we're working on, and through that we invite comments. It always has the policy advisor who's dealing with that issue, who's leading for us on that issue, and we really encourage members to respond to us on those issues and any others. I think my email address is up on the NAPF website, so if people have got things they want to say to me, then by all means pick up the phone or email me.
Is the PQM and some of the other initiatives around DC a sign that you're finally adapting to the eventual demise of DB and the shift in the balance of power from corporations to the individual, if we follow it through to its conclusion?
I mean, I think there's always been a perception that the NAPF's been an organisation of large DB schemes, and actually that's never been true. We've always had a large slug of DC provision, and clearly as DB is declining, the number of our members with DC schemes is increasing. I think almost all of our members now will have a DC scheme of one form or another. And I think the PQM reflects that. And, you know, we recognise where we are in the DB market, but we also have to recognise, and I think government has to recognise, that there are still over 2.5 million people saving in DB schemes in the private sector today. There's over 5 million people saving in public sector DB schemes. And we can't ignore that. You know, we can't just say, well, you know, we'll just let that slide. We'll let that sort of wither on the vine. We have to do something to support DB, but we also have to acknowledge that we need to do something to support DC as well. So it's not either or for the NAPF, it's both. And I think we need to be very careful that whilst we don't just, you know, sign up unthinkingly to what's gone before, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've spent the last 8 years focusing on this really big initiative, really big problem that we're facing as a nation. Too many people not saving or under-saving for retirement. And I think we need to be very careful before we fundamentally review that settlement that we've spent so long arriving at around auto-enrolment, around mandatory contributions, and the creation of NEST, this new scheme for employers, particularly small employers who can't run their schemes or haven't historically run a pension scheme. So, you know, I think there is a lot of merit in that settlement. Mm-hmm. Now, there's clearly an awful lot that we need to do to make that work, in particular to make auto-enrolment work for employers and schemes like NAPF members who have provide pensions far in excess of anything that will come out of the statutory minimum from 2012 onwards. We need to make sure we get that right so we don't see widespread levelling down. But, you know, I think we do need to recognise and face up as a nation to the fact that we're not saving enough for retirement, and we can't dodge that issue, and government can't dodge that issue either.
No, I would agree with that. I think it's a desperate problem for the younger generation several decades down the line if we don't get our act together.
I absolutely agree, and that's why, you know, we just simply can't dodge these issues. And of course, you know, we're facing very difficult times. We've come out of a very deep recession, but we need, you know, and pensions is always a long-term business, and of course politicians have very short-term time horizons. So part of what we're doing at the NAPF is trying to encourage politicians to look beyond the next election and the one after that to really what this means for the next generation, because if we don't, then we really are facing very, very significant problems, and the sort of issues that we've been discussing today and in the past will seem, you know, like a walk in the park to the problems that we really do need to face up to.
Indeed, and I quite agree with you. So on that sombre note, but one that we can't afford to ignore, I'd like to thank Joanne Segars for talking to us today about the real issue of what to do for future generations in UK pension provision. Joanne, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Look forward to your comments on the site, and don't forget that we will be giving Joanne feedback. Goodbye.